Dear Mr. President, dear Volodymyr Zelensky, dear Mr. Melnik, dear Mr. Brook, dear ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, and for a moment I think, maybe it's a bad dream? And at that very moment it becomes clear to me. No, it's not a bad dream at all. This has been a daily bad dream, a nightmare every night for this country for almost 4 years. And not only for Ukraine, but for all of us. For almost 4 years now, war has returned to Europe and is raging there. That is why this slogan, Resilience in Action, was chosen for this 8th German-Ukrainian Economic Conference. And this motif describes everything exactly as Ukraine has been demonstrating for almost 4 years. This is also a task for all of us, Europeans. We are all in Europe. We face the same challenge of strengthening our capacity for resistance. And we need to keep repeating it, and especially on a day like today, we need to call it by its name. This is about a criminal war, Putin's attack on Ukraine, which occurred in 2022 and is still ongoing. This is a criminal attack on the European order, which Russia and previously the Soviet Union agreed with all of us. And whoever doubts that, just look at the development of Russia's hybrid attacks on the territory of the entire European Union and the European continent. And with what accuracy? With what excessive attention Russia resorts to crimes in Ukraine. And what the Russian army does every day in Ukraine is revisionism and violence. But at the same time, the resistance of Ukrainians shows us that this is truly resilience in action. Karl Schlegel, historian and winner of the German Booksellers Prize, put it this way: Ukrainians are a mirror, into which we look, and which reminds us of what Europe once fought for, and stood for, and why this Europe is worth defending. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to add from myself. This Europe stands for freedom and democracy, for the self-determination of peoples, for peace and, last but not least, for the social market economy. We will be able to preserve everything we have only if there is a stable peace with a free and independent strong Ukraine, which can defend itself against Russian aggression now and in the future. And we need to have a certain historical understanding that the fate of Ukraine is the fate of all of Europe. And so it is a central task that I have undertaken to work closely with Ukraine and to welcome the representatives of Ukraine today. And yesterday, we began negotiations with President Zelensky and representatives of the American delegation, for the first time in this composition. And today I have invited some of our European partners to Berlin for further consultations. And I would like to thank you, Mr. Brook, for organizing this conference at this time in order to make this format something more than just an economic conference. And in parallel, I also called on American and European colleagues to meet in Berlin today. And that's why this is not just an economic conference. So, we are faced with the task of truly effectively supporting Ukraine. Moscow, despite our consultations, continues its offensive on the battlefield. It is also about Moscow's attacks on Ukraine's civilian infrastructure, which have been going on for 4 years. In the European Union, we have moved a lot in a short period of time. What we did to arm Europe itself. And I'm also talking about the unprecedented sanctions that we, together across Europe, have imposed against Russia. I'm talking about military and civilian assistance programs that have been going on for 3.5 years, which are building Ukraine's path to the European Union. We will not give up on this. We will do whatever the situation requires of us and what a just peace requires. This means making sure that Ukraine survives this winter, and also providing the country with everything it needs for further reconstruction. Ladies and gentlemen, Germany takes on a special responsibility in this context. Since February 2022, we have provided €40 billion in military support to Ukraine, as well. We have supported civil infrastructure with €36 billion. And we will allocate more than €11 billion in 2026. And now €170 million are being spent to protect Ukraine's energy infrastructure from Russian attacks. In addition, we will provide energy supply to schools, kindergartens, hospitals, and other infrastructure. These are all goals of the Kremlin's barbaric war. And we are also talking about mutually beneficial cooperation between German and Ukrainian enterprises, and a 10-point program has been developed. It is planned to create a corresponding office of the Ukrainian military industry in Berlin. At the same time, we are working very closely with our partners in Europe and the G7 to open up greater financial prospects for Ukraine. We are also thinking about further financing models. I am also pleased that we can mobilize Russia's frozen assets to support Ukraine for at least the next 2 years. And I want to emphasize that we are not doing this to continue the war. On the contrary, we are doing this in order to end this war as quickly as possible, because it sends a signal to Moscow that it makes no sense for Moscow to continue this war. The stronger we become, the less sense it makes for them to continue this war. And I would like to add something about this week. We have made efforts to create political unity in the Council of Europe. On one of the key issues of our capacity in the European Union. And we need to resolve this issue so that all European countries bear equal risk. But understand me correctly. If we fail to do this, the capacity of the European Union will be severely damaged for years to come. And this will be a very dark hour in our history. When we cannot stand on our own continent and protect ourselves. That is why this hour is so important for us. And at this point I would like to say that along with public capital, we are also allocating private capital for the reconstruction of Ukraine. And there are already a lot of German companies that are currently actively working in Ukraine, and those that are interested in this. And this is not surprising. You heard the numbers. Even during the war, this country's economic activity is growing. And there is very great growth potential, including in the fields of technology, agriculture, and the military-industrial complex. There is also great mineral potential. And we are interested in supporting Ukraine in this. And in this way, we can better attract private potential by creating the necessary prerequisites and improving them despite difficult circumstances. I am very happy that a new funding instrument was announced by our minister a few hours ago. Therefore, I am very pleased that there are so many representatives of enterprises here. By your presence, you demonstrate that you travel to Ukraine and conclude contracts. And my dear ladies and gentlemen, we cannot express even a small fraction of our gratitude for this. Thank you for doing this, for being present and not backing down from your work in Ukraine despite all the difficult circumstances. Thank you very much. We also support these activities. We issue financial guarantees so that enterprises can more easily cooperate with Ukrainian companies. And as for 2026, next year, together with our European partners, we will introduce a €5 billion European flagship fund for reconstruction. We support Ukraine in bilateral cooperation to ensure that Ukraine achieves EU standards. And now we are updating Ukraine's agreement on joining the free trade agreement. I also want to say that investments in the Ukrainian economy are investments in your success. Deepen cooperation and invest in the future of the European internal market. And finally, before Christmas, we see photos of the destruction in Ukraine. And it doesn't take much imagination to imagine how this country will blossom again. We see it every day. This has already been said, and I will repeat. How much determination, strength, courage, and creativity there is in this country and this people. And when this energy is directed not towards war, but towards rebuilding our country, imagine how this country will flourish. And this is one of the key ideas of Europe. So many good things have happened on the European continent over the past decade. This is the well-being of our citizens and countries. We must defend this today and in the future. We have to reassess this for ourselves. And at the same time, Ukrainians stand on our side. We know what that means, and we realize that what we have in Europe, in Western Europe, is not self-evident. We need to fight for this and regain the ability to defend ourselves, and Ukraine is a worthy example for us in this. For us, this is a common task. And for that, I want to thank you for taking part in this forum, for your involvement and for your support. You are doing this not only for Ukraine, but also for Europe. This is your contribution to the common future of Ukraine and Europe. You do it for yourself and for all of us. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and a successful 2026. And let's work to make 2026 a year of peace for Europe and for Ukraine. Thank you very much.